My name is Danielle Y.C. McClean, and I'm a children's author. I'll be reading excerpts from The Whisperer's Warning, which is the sequel to The Protector's Pledge. JV checked his watch and realized that he could not spend much longer in the forest. Granny B would be waiting to hear all about his first day back at school. Now, Granny B is JV's grandmother. So he and Granny B live together in a little village called Alcave. It's a fictional village, meaning that it doesn't exist in real life. It came out of my imagination. And the day when JV is visiting Oscuros, that was his first day of school, and he was visiting Oscuros after the school day had ended. He did not want to disappoint Carol, though, and was about to call out for Papa Bois one more time when he felt a familiar tingle on his arms and the back of his neck. He had neither heard nor seen anything, but instantly knew that he was no longer alone. Papa Bois? He turned in a full circle, but saw no one. I am here. The robust voice came from in front of JV. He squinted, but it was not until Papa Bois took a step forward that JV could distinguish the protector's shape from the surrounding foliage. Do you know what foliage means? Foliage means plants, greenery, trees. Remember, JV is in a forest, so there's lots of foliage that is surrounding him. Not for the first time, JV marveled at Papa Bois' ability to blend seamlessly into the forest, despite his peculiar and impressive form. One would think that a 6-foot-tall, two-legged man-beast with horns would be easy enough to spot, but the mossy fur with which he was covered provided the perfect camouflage. You seek me, man's child. Why? I wanted to see you again, but I also need your help. JV paused, remembering Papa Bois' unfavorable opinion of dwens. Papa Bois had referred to dwens as mischief makers whose presence in the forest was unwelcome. I am listening, man's child. If it is my will and in my power, I shall assist. JV's eyes met the protector's, and he did his best to emulate Riaz's most successful look of innocence. Now, what does emulate mean? Emulate means to copy. And Riaz, remember, Riaz is one of JV's best friends. Now, Riaz is a funny character in that Riaz is always playing tricks on people, and he always sort of tries to play a very innocent person. Well, I'd like to get in touch with dwens. Papa Bois' nostrils flared. The little of his lips that was visible under his heavy facial hair instantly puckered. Listen, wisdom follows, Papa Bois began, but JV held up his hand. I remember, he said, they're mischief makers, and if I know what's good for me, I'll stay away from them. Humph. Papa Bois crossed his arms and tapped a hoof. It's important, and I don't need to talk to all of them, just one. And it's really my friend Carol who needs to contact Marie, the dwen. I need to talk to her too, because what she knows may have to do with me, but I promised Carol that I'd tell her whatever I found out. and we'd go see her together. JV stopped, realizing that he was rambling. Papa Bois' hoof stopped tapping, but his arms remained crossed over the ram's horn that hung from his neck. JV knew that the horn was how Papa Bois communicated with animals and wondered if it was what he needed to call Marie. "No, man's child," the protector said, as though reading JV's mind. "The horn is for my charges. Dwens are not my charges, and like you, hear nothing when I blow." Now let me explain that a little bit. So Papa Bois is one of the protectors of the forest. He protects the animals in the forest and the trees and the plants. And he wears a horn, a ram's horn, around his neck. And when he needs to communicate with the animals, he blows into the horn. And that's how he's able to communicate with them. That's how they know he is calling them, maybe to safety. Okay? Papa Bois studied JV. When he spoke again, he said, "I have no dealings with dwens, but we know one who does. Follow me." The pond was as JV remembered. Tranquil and picturesque, it was one of his favorite places in Oscuros. Yet, he had not returned since Adele's rescue. Now, Adele is a character in the first book who JV helped to rescue. Now, instead of just being able to appreciate its beauty, JV was aware of the danger that lurked under the waters, waters that appeared so calm and inviting. Below, beyond where he could see, was Mama Delos's realm. And given that he had witnessed her dragging one of her enemies to its depths, it was a realm that JV never wished to visit. Now, Mama Delo is one of the mythological characters in Trinidadian folklore. She is half woman, half snake. She has a long, thick serpent's or snake's tail, and she lives in water because she protects the animals, the fish that live in the waters and the seas. Having approached the pool's edge, Papa Bois stood with hands on hips, closed his eyes, and from somewhere deep in his throat emitted a sound that was a combination of a growl and a hiss. The air seemed to vibrate, raising JV's paws, and the strange rumble repeatedly climbed and fell as though in song, before reaching an abrupt end. Instinctively, JV looked toward the water. The ripples that started in the center of the pool were small at first, but they gradually grew in size and intensity until Mama Delos's head and shoulders broke the surface. In 2 graceful strokes, she swam to the large flat rock where JV had first glimpsed her 3 months before, then propped an elbow on the smooth rock stone and rested her chin in the cup of her palm. Droplets in her braids twinkled, and the water undulated gently behind her as she slowly swished her thick serpent tail. Her gaze rested on Papa Bois, and JV had the impression that the 2 protectors could communicate everything they wished to say to each other without words. JV considered stepping forward again as a sign of good faith, but his feet refused to move. Mama Delos's gaze slid to Papa Bois. To what do I owe the pleasure of this visit, Papa? A good day to you, Mama. The youngling requires your help, Papa Bois replied. He turned to leave, paused, and said, Listen, man's child, wisdom follows. There is mischief afoot in this wood. You must take care beneath these trees. Now, in this excerpt, JV is once again in the Oscuro's forest, but this time he's joined with his best friends, Carol and Riaz. People had begun to emerge from behind the trees. Their clothes were shabby with evidence of having been mended multiple times, and their hats, woven from coconut leaves, had wide brims that dropped low over what would have been the upper half of their faces, if they had had faces. It looked as though a potter working with clay had never finished fashioning them. There was a face shape, depressions where eyes should have been, the hint of a mound for a nose, but no details. Because their feet were backward, when they approached, the dwens' toes touched the ground before their heels, so they moved with a slight hop. Judging from their heights and physiques, JV guessed that they ranged from toddlers to teens. The dwens halted their advance and, holding hands, fanned out and encircled JV, Carol, and Riaz. Slowly, as though by instinct, JV, Carol, and Riaz took up a defensive position and, with backs to each other, faced the ring of dwens. If JV counted correctly, there were 18 of them. They were motionless and without facial cues. Without those facial cues, JV could only assume that their focus was entirely on the 3 visitors to the forest. The 3 visitors being whom? JV, Carol, and Riaz. So what now, Carol? Riaz asked. And he's asking Carol that because it was Carol's idea for them to come into the forest to meet with Marie, who is one of the dwens that she had met with briefly before in book 1. Well, Carol is saying, we figure out which one is Marie and talk to her alone, she replied. Yeah, well, good luck with that, Riaz said in a loud whisper. They all have the same face, as in no face. Shh, JV commanded. Worse than being surrounded by 18 dwens would be being surrounded by 18 insulted dwens. Stop staring at their faces, Riaz, he hissed. And don't look at their feet either. Try focusing on their necks instead. Akin? Huh? JV's stomach lurched. Who said that? He asked. Riaz looked over to him, eyebrows drawn together. Who said what? I thought I heard. Never mind. JV turned to Carol. How do we know which one is Marie? I'll just ask for her, she said. No reason for them to be unreasonable. None of the dwens budged. Marie, if you're here, I'm sorry that I didn't come back sooner. I was traveling. So I'll explain. Carol had had an encounter with Marie, in that she had met Marie in the forest before. Marie, who is a dwen, wanted to play with Carol, wanted Carol to be her friend, and she asked Carol to come back. And Carol didn't come back. She had gone on vacation with her family. So now Carol is apologizing to Marie for not having come back to meet with her again. Before now, they started to chant in a call and response pattern, despite having no mouths. It was one of the eeriest things JV had ever experienced. And eerie means strange, sort of scary, frightening a little bit, okay? So this is what the chant is like. You called, we've come. We're here, you're near. What do you want with us? To talk? To play? Perhaps to stay? That would be marvelous.